What surprised me was how much knowledge there was in the research community and how well they understood autism and how they clearly identified a whole range of risk factors. I think the biggest surprise was how come I hadn't heard about this. There's enough valuable information that parents can use right now, and it's easy. Things like washing the residue off your vegetables. That was an interesting one I found. But the real surprise was how much researchers already knew about the triggers or the risk factors for autism. And they were clearly identified, and that you can predict autism in a child by some of their blood test results or their urine test results, which I find incredible. And we can do this. We can learn a lot more. We can do more for pregnant women. We can do more for family health. We can do more for babies just by knowing what the risk factors are and avoiding them or increasing certain nutrients. There's so much we can do, and it's within the reach of parents, which I find really exciting. As parents can decide what they do or don't do. So
Today's guest is Nyema Hermiston, who has been on the podcast before. She is a homeopath and a healer here in Australia, and she has just released a new book called Planning Parenthood in the Age of Autism. So today is not a homeopathy episode. It is purely based on the research that she has done over the past few years as she was doing her science degree and really digging deep into the research that's out there that will predispose a child to developing autism. And, knowledge really is power. And it's one of those things where if you are a woman looking to conceive in the coming years, there are actually so much that you can do to prevent your child or reduce the risk of your child having autism. So with the autism rates being 1 in 31 these days, the risks are increasing ever so much. And although we love all of our children with autism, I have so many clients with autism that I love with all of my heart. There is no denying that it can be incredibly hard on the families where often one of the parents will never be able to work because they have to take care of the child full time. Many of them are not able to toilet by themselves. They have major issues sleeping. They're not able to communicate. So we are all doing the best that we can to obviously help these beautiful children in the best way that we possibly can. Just as a side note here, if anyone hasn't listened to the podcast called The Telepathy Tapes yet, please do. If you have a child with autism in your life, especially non-speaking, please listen to the Telepathy Tapes podcast. It is amazing. But anyway, that's not what this episode's about. This episode is about Planning Parenthood in the Age of Autism, a research-based guide. And Nyema will be talking in this episode about some of the factors that you may not be aware of that may predispose your child to developing autism. So I just wanted to make it really clear that we obviously, there's no judgment here. We love all of our children, no matter what obstacles they are presented with. But if there is something that we can do to make life easier for our children then why wouldn't we do it? So have a listen to today's episode. I found it incredibly empowering. Nyema's book is really beautiful where it's not doom and gloom. She does give you solutions. She gives you an action plan. She gives you great tips that you can do to minimize the risk of your child having autism. So this is a very empowering podcast. Her book is very empowering. And I hope that as a community, we can come together to look at the things in our environment that is predisposing our children to developing autism. And there's so much research out there today, which is really all what this podcast is about, is what is the research saying about things that can increase the risk factors. So maybe I should put a little bit of a trigger warning for some people on here who may find this to be a sensitive topic. I just want you to know that Nyema and myself come from a place of wanting to empower you and coming from a place of love as healers and wanting to get the information out there to you. So I hope that you enjoy this episode and I hope that you find it empowering. To get a copy of Nyema's book, visit karunahealthcare.com.au. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout, where today we have the incredible Nyema Hermiston back on the podcast. So do go listen back on episode 222. You had all the twos if you wanted to hear a bit more about her origin story. But welcome back to the show, Nyema.
Thank you, Eugenie. It's a pleasure.
Well, I just have to say a personal thank you as well. Many of the listeners on the podcast will know that my family and I had a bit of a caravan trip around Australia. It was cut short because our house sitter cancelled on us. So it was only 3.5 months in the end. But what I am really excited about is that we got to spend 2 nights at Nyema's place. We parked up our caravan in their car park, which we were very happy was nice and flat. So it made it easy to park. And we had a lovely bonfire. Nyema and John are incredible cooks, I have to say. My kiddies love the beautiful pancakes that you made and the lovely fresh raspberries out of the garden. And you really walk the walk with all your beautiful veggies that you grow and all your incredible food that you make. So thank you so much for looking after us.
That was fun.
It was really fun. So when we came to visit you, you were super excited about your book, your new book that you were busy writing, Planning Parenthood in the Age of Autism. And I know at the time you were saying, I'm almost done, Eugenie, I'm almost done, just going through it with my editor. And 2 days ago, I actually had a copy arrive at the clinic, which I was very excited about. And I did manage to read it all, which is great. It was a really good read with loads of great information. My only complaint, Nyema, is that you have got too many incredible documentaries in here that you say to watch and incredible extra reading that you recommend. So now I'm going to be really busy catching up on all of that. So all throughout the book, I'll just show here on, for anyone listening on Rumble or YouTube, all throughout the book, Nyema's got these great little extra reads that you can do. And you've got incredible documentaries there. You've got another one there. Watch like documentaries and books that you recommend. So this is a really, really good resource. But firstly, before I ramble too much, tell our listeners about your inspiration of why you decided to write Planning Parenthood in the Age of Autism. What was the driving force behind this for you?
Oh my goodness, what a big question. Well, I have always been adamant or felt it was important to help children have a very healthy life and a natural life. And as you know, these days there is kind of medicine for everything, and that's great when you need it. So I did write the Treat Your Child Yourself, which is natural treatments to keep children healthy. But really, it was during COVID that it just literally stumbled into my inbox. Do you want to do a degree, a science degree? And it was the last year it was going to be run by Middlesex Uni and in London, and they were offering it at half price. And I thought, well, how can I not do this? So it was a 1-year course because of all the previous study I had done. So I thought I can handle a year. And then comes towards the end of the course, and we had to embark on a large project and design a mock-up study for treating a condition with homeopathy. And so I thought it was only ever intended to be theoretical. I'm a very practical person, and I thought I'm not going to do all that work for something theoretical. So I'm going to choose autism because that's been bugging me for so long about what is it really all about. And it was literally an accident because, that this book came about because I had to research, I had to locate all the studies on autism and being treated by natural therapies, including homeopathy. And as a result of that, part of the process is to list all the information on autism and natural therapies. So you go through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies and then find the ones that you can use, and off you go on your project. But in that process, I found all this research about causes of autism. I saw researchers making mice autistic. So if they know how to make a mouse autistic, then they know what autism's about. And I found all this research about what are the key metabolic indicators in autistic children. Really clear as day, no doubt about it. It's just a fact of life. And so this shocked me, not because had been found, but because I didn't know. And as far as I could tell, other people didn't know either. And even practitioners and certainly parents. And the thing is that when you know something is present, like oxidative stress is a big word that's bandied around with autism, if you know that's there, then you know that there are things that you can do about it. And so then came the fact of all these studies on autism risk factors. And that was what really blew my mind, because if you have a risk factor, if you can imagine for a moment heart disease, we all know what the risk factors are. They're diet and poor exercise and bad diet. And so it's kind of the same with autism, that there are these risk factors. And I'm thinking, hang on a second, if we know that there are these, and there's quite a wide range of them, risk factors, then there's something we can do here. And I reckon parents would really like to know about this. And so it went from there. And so really I got a big bee in my bonnet and off I went.
I just also have to do a little shout out because in November 2023, you did a talk on some of this research at the Australian Homeopathic Association's conference in Brisbane. And that was really mind blowing as well, where you were presenting some of this research that you were looking into related to autism. And I think you had like a few other things. I remember you talking about vitamin D specifically, which really blew my mind, that there's all these studies showing how beneficial vitamin D is. And I think that is kind of like the premise of the whole book, is that everything that's in here is backed up by research. Like you've really pulled all the research from everywhere. And that is what I feel is going to be really helpful. I think, especially reading this book before you even conceive, because you actually have some great advice in here of things that you can reduce in your environment, like personal care products or things that you're exposed to, diet, all that sort of stuff to reduce the risk. And it is a sensitive topic. I found myself kind of like getting a little bit worried before this interview, because we're talking about a book on how we are kind of helping parents to not have a child with autism, which can be conceived and somehow saying that there's something wrong with children with autism. That's not what we're saying at all. We're just how I would see it, Nyema. You might not agree, so you say what you want. But I would just say that you wouldn't necessarily wish to have a child who is nonverbal or who cannot actually look after themselves and who you will care for the rest of your life. So we're not saying that there's anything wrong with children with autism as such. We're just saying that there are some things that you can do to ensure that your child is as healthy as possible. I don't know. I don't really know how to word this properly, but hopefully you know what I'm trying to say.
I do. And what's happened is neurodivergence, as it's known, and this is such a huge, overwhelmingly huge topic,
Yes. Yeah.
neurodivergence in itself. And so neurodivergent people, and many of them have worked very, very hard to achieve having a normal life with a lot of support from their parents, and they go on to be some brilliant people in society. Who could criticize that or think that that's not ideal? I think when you're looking at autism risk, which is what this book really is about, nobody really wants to take that risk. I can't imagine a parent is going to say, well, if my child's neurodivergent, then, I can live with that. It's not really like that, because we never know the degree of the autism. And the other thing is that it's not just autism is a spectrum, but it's not just autism. So there are all these other neurodivergent type diagnoses around autism. And I wouldn't say I've ever seen a parent who's found that an easy road,
Yeah.
even though in the end they've got a wonderful child who
Mm.
can live a relatively normal life and they can have relationships and work, and that's fantastic. The underbelly of autism is the people, the families who can't achieve that. And that's really what gets me going, because some of the children who are born autistic or develop autism as they get a bit older, literally they're not even able to undertake behavioral therapy. And by statistics quoted in the book, about 30% of the autism population. When you think of the incidence of autism increasing so rapidly, you cannot just feel comfortable about, well, I might have a neurodivergent child. What I think is important is wherever the child's at, that they are given the best of care to achieve as much as they can in their life. But parents have to work very hard, and even with a mildly autistic child, there's a lot of demands on parents to have them give them the care that they need. So it's a prickly topic for sure.
I have to say, you approach that really well in the book because you kind of preface some of the trickier chapters that have more kind of confronting stuff in a very nice way. And you kind of set up the reader with things like, okay, so this next topic is going to be pretty heavy. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's okay. You can integrate things slowly. And then at the end of the topic, you're like, okay, you've done well. You've read through this. Like, I kind of felt like supported through the book. I could really feel for your tone as a healer of over 30 years. Anyone who hasn't listened to your episode 222 yet, Nyema does come from a nursing background and is a homeopath and a herbalist and healer in her own right. And I really felt that nurturing, healing side of you coming through in the book. I really love how you were holding my hand throughout the reading. And I was like, okay, Nyema says it's going to be okay not to feel overwhelmed. And I can, integrate these things slowly. So I can see how a parent reading this who feels a bit trepidatious about all of this will actually feel supported through all of it, because you're presenting some pretty heavy information, but in a very loving, caring way. And you can tell in the tone of the book that you come across from a really good place of really wanting to empower people with information that is in the research. It's not you just making stuff up. This is actually telling you in the research that if you have something like, and maybe we can start there, something like antidepressants in pregnancy, there are meta-analysis saying that there are, in fact, in your book here, I actually highlighted it. You say there are at least 3 meta-analysis on the association between women taking SSRIs during pregnancy and autism risk. 2 of these studies say there is a significantly higher risk. So why wouldn't you want to know that? Like, if you are somebody that is on antidepressants and you're considering getting pregnant, there are studies showing that there's a significantly higher risk of you then having a child with autism. So why wouldn't you want to know that information so that you can work with a practitioner to maybe wean off the antidepressants before becoming pregnant so that the risk is lower?
So that's great in theory, but if you've been struggling with your mental health and you've found stability with your medication, it's confronting. But I decided at the beginning of the book I wasn't going to bring in any information that the reader couldn't do something about. And so it's very pragmatic, very practical. It's like, okay, so if you're in this situation, these are the other things that you can do that might help you avoid having to do A, B, or C.
And actually, I just want to give a shout out to the book that you mentioned there, because you mentioned a book here called A Mind of Your Own by a psychiatrist actually, who rarely prescribes SSRIs. And she says that things like thyroid or fatigue or, there's actually underlying things. And so actually fixing that can be really helpful. So I do like that you sprinkle tools throughout. So like you say, you're not just like saying it's all doom and gloom and then the reader leaves with, oh, there's nothing I can do about it, I'm doomed. You actually do give practical advice.
There's nothing in there like you've just got to go off that medication or you could have an autistic child. That is not true for a start. And so the content of the book does have to be taken in context. Nobody's going to get sick from having one risk factor. But what's happening is it's a book about modern life and the impacts that the modern life, what we drink, what we eat, what we take, medicines, the environments we live in, air pollution, all that kind of thing. So I did make a point of, if I'm going to say this is what the situation with this particular lifestyle method or food that you eat, or like fast food and all that kind of thing, then there are alternatives, there are ways around it. And I do also say very carefully, just try one thing at a time. The wheels aren't going to drop off just because you've read the book. Everything's still okay, you're cruising along nicely, whatever you're doing, but start making changes, start making improvement, especially if there's autism in your family already. That means that the likelihood of another member of the family, the extended family even, could be more vulnerable. And there's a lot that parents can do about it. And one of the things that I have found in the area of autism is there's such hopelessness and such despair because nobody gets any recommendations, nobody's told what they can do about it. It's just considered to be your misfortune if you have an autistic child.
Yeah, that's really frustrating, just knowing, like, wanting to have some answers of why this might be and just being told it's random when actually it's not, because there are thousands of studies telling you some of the reasons that potentially
Mm.
have led to it. What I would like to do is if you can tell us some of the findings that you were most surprised by. And while you're having a chat about that, I am just going to flick through your book for anyone watching on Rumble or YouTube, because I think it's important that people just see like a little bit of a layout of the book. It's laid out very beautifully, which I wouldn't expect any less of you and John with having your own publishing company. But it's beautifully laid out, and just so people can get like a little bit of a feel for the book. And yeah, so anybody listening on Rumble and YouTube, you can have a little look there. But tell us a little bit about some of the findings in your research that you were maybe most surprised by.
Oh, that's a big question. I think what surprised me was how much knowledge there was in the research community and how well they understood autism and how they clearly identified a whole range of risk factors. I think the biggest surprise was how come I hadn't heard about this? Because I had sort of read quite widely about autism, and how come other practitioners don't know about it? Because without wanting to toot my own horn, when I did that presentation in Brisbane, no one in the room had come across it before. And these are accomplished practitioners. And it's like it's buried in the research, and the research is not reaching the people who need it the most, and that's parents. So there's always a lot of controversy when researchers come up with a conclusion about something, and then it's debated in the medical community, and sometimes it might get lost in that. But my goal was to take that step over that academic area and just bring it to the parents, because I don't feel that we have time to come to an agreement about certain things in 20 or 25 years' time. I think there's enough valuable information that parents can use right now, and it's easy. Things like washing the residue off your vegetables. That was an interesting one I found. Fruit and veg, you can soak them in salt or baking soda, and it washes a lot of the pesticide residues off them, and then eat them rather than just using plain water. But the real surprise was how much researchers already knew about the triggers or the risk factors for autism. And they were clearly identified, and that you can predict autism in a child by some of their blood test results or their urine test results, which I find incredible. It's like, wow. And we can do this. We can learn a lot more. We can do more for pregnant women. We can do more for family health. We can do more for babies just by knowing what the risk factors are, and avoiding them or increasing certain nutrients. There's so much we can do, and it's within the reach of parents, which I find really exciting.
Mm.
As parents can decide what they do or don't do, instead of being advised by people who, to be, with all due respect, practitioners are busy people. They don't always have time, and they may rely on, news or articles that come. But if I hadn't dug in to that research, and I had no choice, it's challenging looking into research. And because there's so much of it, and you have to try and find the better quality papers, that kind of thing. So it's not a fun thing to do unless you're that way inclined, because it's dense, it's time consuming, can be depressing. So I really did want to bring the information to parents and do it that way, rather than have the information circulating around the profession instead.
Yeah, something I'm just looking through, like scrolling through the book, looking at the highlighted bits. You've got something here about antibiotics during pregnancy as well. And I think this is really important that we empower ourselves with ways to treat ourselves naturally. And this is obviously where homeopathy, I think, is just one of the best things ever, because it's all safe during pregnancy. But knowing what to do if we get sick in pregnancy to avoid antibiotics, for example, because they are often given willy-nilly. But the reality is that, like in the book, you say there's another systematic review. Just have to say, by the way, I really like that at the start of the book, you differentiated between all the different types of research. So for those, I did do a research paper when I studied homeopathy, but it was a long time ago, so I couldn't remember all the terms, but you actually clarify each term. What is a meta-analysis? What is a systematic review? So you said there's a systematic review and meta-analysis covering almost 1,500 research papers, which is a lot, and it found that early antibiotic exposure, including pre and postnatal, significantly increases the ASD risk in children. So this is during pregnancy and after birth. So even having information like this, knowing that if your child has an ear infection when they're 6 months old, if you can treat it with homeopathy or other natural means and not have that round of antibiotics, it is going to reduce their risk of autism, or even during pregnancy. So antibiotics are given so quickly when there are natural ways. We're not saying don't use it, but just use it as a last resort because it is going to increase your risk. And people don't know this.
Yeah, what I really like about that sort of information is because there is this idea, oh, I don't want my child to have too many antibiotics. Most parents feel that way. But if they were asked to explain why, that's another thing. And there's all the talk of gut health. But the impact of even one course of antibiotics on gut health is significant, and that is described. And there's a lot about the gut-brain axis. So what affects your gut affects your brain, and if you're an adult, that could affect your mood, but in a baby, it can affect your neurodevelopment. And so I think when people know why antibiotics may not be good, then they've got all the reasons in the world to try and find another way of treating an infection. And I do say we do need antibiotics. They're not bad, but they are overused, and there wouldn't be a doctor on earth who didn't agree with that. And there is a lot of trouble with antimicrobial resistance. So there are very good reasons to avoid antibiotics where at all possible. And there are times when, yes, they are needed. But for an ear infection, there's so many things parents can do before they get to that point.
And just a little plug for Nyema's book. She's written this tiny little book that says, it's called Treat Your Child's Ear Infections Yourself or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's a great book, speaking of ear infections. But once again, what's nice in the book is you don't just say, don't take antibiotics or you're doomed. You actually give lots of great advice on here on what to do to boost your immune system during pregnancy. And another little practical tip. So there's lots of little practical tips. One of them was about how to wash your fruits and vegetables. And this one, for example, is you say here, if you have been exposed to someone with a cold, to use a nasal rinse and a throat gargle for 30 seconds to 2 minutes with 1% solution of hydrogen peroxide within 24 hours of being exposed to actually just clear out those viruses. So you do actually give lots of, there's lots of practical tips in here. There's even some really nice little recipes at the end to help increase fruits and veg in your diet. And I'm sure that you've made all these yourself because I've seen what incredible
Yes.
stuff you cook up in your kitchen. Actually, John as well. He's also an amazing cook. Both of you are.
Yeah. He does the rye dough sour bread. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this theory that anyone will do the right thing or the best thing for themselves or their health if it's easy enough. And so quite often you think, oh, I'm depressed. I need to go to see a psychiatrist, whatever it may be. Or these things do happen in the end, but there's so much that can be done. Probably one of the sections I spent the most time on was the alternatives for boosting your serotonin for mood. And that is a huge element of the book. All the things that will naturally increase serotonin and simple things like exercise, which most people already know. But when you see it couched in a way as this is going to be good for you and your baby, and it can just be a meditation, 10 minutes a day can make a big difference to how you feel. So when something is really simple to change, or it's a simple suggestion, people are much more likely to do it rather than you have to run around the block 17 times to get your serotonin to go from this level to that level, which might be true, but most people are not going to do that. But so my criteria was, would I do this if I needed to? And could I do it if I was a busy parent with a few children? Is that going to be doable for me? And those are mostly what the recommendations in the book are. With busy families, with limited budgets, there's nothing there that is costly. So a lot of affordable actions that can be taken.
I know you mentioned in here about using like kefir grains to make your own water or milk kefir instead of like buying expensive probiotics and things like that. So
Oh,
you really
yes.
have like kept it within the budget and
Mm.
accessible.
That came from practice. So we have prescribed a lot of probiotics in our practice. And the one substance that I saw make the biggest difference to people's gut health was kefir grain, which, if you're really hard pressed, you can buy online for a few dollars, or most of the time you can find someone who's already got one. We give them to our patients for nothing because you can just grow them so easily. And that has the broadest range of probiotics in it. So things like that. And people think, oh, I need probiotic. There's been a lot of very popular probiotics that are advertised on TV, go into the health food shop or the pharmacy, and there they are. And it's not to say that they're not helpful, not for 1 second, but how many people can afford $50 or whatever it is for a bottle of probiotics on an ongoing basis? So that's the mentality that I have brought in.
And that's also one of the reasons I have so much respect for you and John, because you are both clinicians. Like, you have busy practices. I know you winded yours down a little bit, and John, but he's still going full throttle. My husband actually just had a follow up with him yesterday because he's my husband's homeopath. So you're both clinicians. So you are not just about theoretical things where you're teaching stuff, but you don't actually have experience to back it up. Both of you have been in the trenches and are still in the trenches, actually helping people on a daily basis. So you are seeing in your clinic what works. And I just have to give a little plug to Oligoscan while we're chatting. And I'm so glad that you have got some Oligoscan results in the book as well. To be fair, I wouldn't have expected any otherwise. I would have been disappointed if you didn't have some Oligoscan. So all throughout the book, you'll see some of the types of scans that you might see in a pregnant woman or in children with autism, and some of the predisposing kind of like warning signs. You'll have to listen back on my episodes with John Gamble on Oligoscan on what that is. But Nyema and John are the license holders for, actually, I should probably say photospectrometry, hey, because I know we'd be a little bit careful with using the term Oligoscan. But they're the license holders for this software in Australia. And I've personally done over 350 scans now in the past, almost 2 years. And it has been completely invaluable in my clinic. I cannot run my practice without it anymore. And I feel that's where the two of you, I just have so much respect for you, because you actually see things happen in your clinic and you notice trends and then you prescribe on that. It's not just theoretical knowledge. So that's actually, sorry, that was a roundabout way of just saying, I love that you both are grounded in practical experience.
Thank you. Everything in that book, really, that is my own opinion. The style of the book, obviously, is from me.
Mm.
But I was very adamant that I would not put anything in the book unless I could verify it. So there's all the studies. So if I'm saying, say, for example, vitamin D can help improve autism, there's no question. And what some people do is they might take a little bit of vitamin D or be tested and say, oh, I'm not vitamin D deficient. But actually, in autism, the doses need to be much higher, that kind of thing. So if I say, oh, autistic children or mothers, actually, the vitamin D of the mother is transmitted to the baby. So what we're talking about specifically in this book is the health of the pregnant woman. And so you can do a vitamin D check on her, and then I can show the result. And I think there's one there of two teenage girls with both with low vitamin Ds. And it's like, it could be within 10 years that those girls would be having babies. We want the babies to have lots of vitamin D in their system. So it really is very preventative in that sense. So there's not much point me saying everybody needs plenty of vitamin D, because lots of people have got plenty of vitamin D, but some haven't. And so during pregnancy, it's really important for pregnant women to know what their nutrient levels are. Vitamin D is one of the big ones. So it's all verified by the scans. And just help people understand what spectrophotometry is, it's actually a device that measures the light and of certain, it was originated in geology in the 1930s. And so it would measure the elements in the soil and rock samples. And now that can be used in laboratories all over the world. And in the last 15 years, let's say, it's being used in people to measure the tissue levels of their nutrients and also their toxicities.
Just double check, that was episode 361 I did with John on OligoScan to help solve your health mystery. So do go and check that episode out.
So if a pregnant woman has a high level of a toxic mineral, and we're all walking around with toxic minerals in us, it becomes important then to take something that's going to neutralize that heavy metal. And what I've learned since I've been doing OligoScan, and it's called SoCheck in Europe for European listeners, is that you don't actually have to chelate heavy metals. Like there's this whole idea of, I've got a heavy metal, I've got to get it out, because nobody likes red lines on their scan. But what it tells us is this person, their oxidative stress risk is higher because of this level of this particular substance. It could be a metal, it could be a chemical, it could be that which don't show up on oligoscans, it's just the nutrient, minerals and toxicities. Then there's things we can do about to neutralize that. And they can be really simple, like drinking lots of water, taking lots of vitamin C, inexpensive, fabulous things that they can do. And so these were all the things that heightened my learning and the research for this book. It was just the most fabulous experience, I have to say.
There's one thing that I really want to have a talk about, and that is some of the commonly used pain and fever medications that children are given. And I see this in Facebook mothers groups literally on a daily basis, where a mum will say, oh, I just gave XYZ pain and fever medication because my child just seems a little bit unwell. I didn't know what to do. Or for teething is often around 6 months or whatever when the teeth starts like moving around. Children will get round after round of commonly used medications to help with, like pharmaceutical medications, to help with the pain and fever, when there is a very strong link in how this can increase the risk of autism. So mums using this during pregnancy, there's studies for that, but also the use of it in children. And it's given so willy-nilly without any, some of these medications are actually the number one cause of liver failure in children, which just doesn't get talked about on a regular basis. So, were you surprised finding a link, like finding so many studies that links the use of these commonly used medications to autism, or were you
I think
expecting that?
just realizing how affected children are by some medications was shocking. And to be fair, this is what parents are told to do. This is the advice. It's deemed normal. And so this is where there are many other things that can be used instead. And there are always times when a medication is super useful and we're lucky we have a choice. But when that research was breathtaking, and when we know we have tools like acupuncture, herbal medicine, homeopathy, just vitamin C, zinc, things like that to treat illnesses, and practical things to do for pain, ear infections, magnesium's very good for pain, all those kinds of things. There are so many alternatives. So what I have tried to do is explain why you would want to use those alternatives. And quite often, I always say to patients with anything, try the natural therapies as a first resort and the medicines as a last resort. Often it happens the other way around. But that's because that's how parents have been educated.
I do think we need a whole re-education for parents in becoming the first line of healers in their homes again. But I definitely, especially since COVID, I am seeing a change in that. I'm seeing all these young mums coming through and actively learning ways of treating their children naturally. We need that en masse. There's still lots of mums who, and I say mums because they tend to be the main caregivers, but that are not confident in, like, if your child is sick, just not knowing what to do, because we just don't get taught that. We don't get taught. It should be the basic thing that you get taught at school, is how to heal yourself and how to take care of yourself, but we don't get taught that.
It is terrifying when your child's sick and you don't know what's going on and you see them listless and hot, and it's terrifying. And I do think parents, mums and parents and dads need support in dealing with that. And when parents know how to do that, they absolutely love it. It's an empowering feeling. Your child gets an earache at 6:30 on a Friday night. It's quite stressful. You have a sleepless night. Then the medical surgeries are chock-a-block full on the weekends. And that was as I said, I am an intensely practical person. And so it's like, if you've got a book, we've got the two books, there's Treat Your Child Yourself, and then the one specifically, the booklet on ear infections. With that in mind, it's like, at least it's somewhere for you to start. There's a good chance it's going to help, and it's going to give you information that's going to help reassure you about you doing the right thing, or what to do if it doesn't work, that kind of thing. And I do also think, I'm not sure if I mentioned it already, but was going to, when people know, when it's easy for people to access a certain treatment or a certain product, they'll use it. If it's difficult, they won't. So if they don't have any guidelines to treat a child, for example, for ear infections, just with a heat pack, it sounds so unbelievably simple, but a lot of parents don't know about that. So the first thing they want to do is relieve their child's pain. And of course they want to do that. It's imperative. So it's like, if it's easy and it's laid out before them, parents can inform themselves. They can get a handbook. There's so many around, not just mine, and follow the guidelines in that. And that's what this book really encourages parents to do.
I just have to say, Nyema's book, Treat Your Child Yourself, is incredible. I think we've sold more than probably 200 copies by now.
Yeah.
So we do sell Nyema's book on our website. And it feels like every month, just about, I'm sending you an email for another 30 or 40 books to send our way. They just sell like hotcakes, and the parents love it because it's not just homeopathic advice. You've got great natural, like other natural advice and practical advice from your nursing background as well, which makes it a really good all-rounder book. So that's why I like to sell it, because I feel it's empowering to parents on so many different levels.
It's so important to educate people. If your child's hot and you don't know why, can you imagine all the thoughts that go through your head? Have they got meningitis? Could be one of the first ones, If there's chicken pox going around, it's probably that. Yeah. So the more education or the more information parents have access to in an easy to absorb when under stress type format, then that's so reassuring. And there are so many things that parents can do before turning to the medications. And I think all medications really do have side effects on adults as well. But children are particularly sensitive, and really we do need to avoid where possible.
I just have to also give a big shout out that I'm so glad you talked about the role of fevers in your book, because that, I think, is the number one thing that parents freak out about. And I know that for myself, even though, so I got pregnant in my second year and I had my son in my third year. And so I had already had 2 years of natural studies under the belt. So I knew quite a bit. But I remember that first fever he had, and I'm not an anxious person by nature at all, but his first fever, I freaked out. And thank goodness I had belladonna, and neither of my kids have ever had any of the commonly used pain and fever medications in their life. And that is thanks to homeopathy, and because I understood the role of a fever in the body. And maybe it's our lack of education in biology at school, or like really like understanding how the body works. But so many parents don't understand the important role of a fever. And I think it might have been Dr. Suzanne Humphreys that said, if you suppress a fever, it's like shooting your guard dog when it's trying to warn you of an intruder. And so when you kind of like understand that, it's like your body is working so hard to create balance. And if you are stopping that process with a suppressive medication, you're not allowing your body to do what it needs to do. And there are consequences for that. But if you don't understand that, then, like, how are you supposed to know this if we're not taught that?
So I did put a rather large section on dealing with fever in the book for that reason. And I found that there was a lot of medical support for the theories. If you let a fever run, and I used to tell parents this when we were running the ear clinic, if you let a fever run, it will shorten the illness because the high temperature kills the organism that's causing the fever. And if you bring the fever down by any means, even just the cool bath, first of all, it doesn't make any difference to the length of the illness, but it can actually prolong the illness because the lower body temperature is unable to kill the bugs that are there. And when you're talking about surprises, one of the big surprises was the survey that the Royal College of the Melbourne Hospital for Children, they did a survey and they found out that a whole lot of statistics, but 30% of parents thought that a high fever could cause death. So that's a lot of fear in the community. Yeah. And of course, the one-liner is a fever's not an illness, it's just your body doing its job kind of thing. So again, to be fair to parents, they are told to treat fevers.
Yeah.
They are guided to treat fevers and to bring the fever down. Even though when you go into the depths of the medical research, they do follow this idea that, don't lower a fever because it shortens the period of illness. And there are provisos too, like if the child's got a stiff neck and a high-pitched scream, then, you have to get medical attention. And I think it's babies under
I think it's 3 months. Yeah, it said 3 months in your book.
If they've got a fever over 38.5, they should see a doctor, that kind of thing. So it's not like there are no blanket statements about anything. Yeah.
And I think, doesn't a lot of it just come down to tuning into our bodies and actually just using our own common sense instead of all the external noise that we're hearing, actually just using some common sense and our own internal, I don't know, knowledge as well, like just getting back in touch with that.
Not everyone has the confidence to do that. They might have a feeling about something, but I do think because our medical services and health services are so fantastic, really, that we've come to rely on them. But if you don't have access to them, then it can be quite a fearful situation for parents. And that's always what I've had in mind with my books. It's like, 3:15 a.m. and your child's screaming with pain. A book, or I couldn't imagine myself going online at that point, but if I had a book, I would use it. So I still think books have their purpose. And so that's all of my books have been written in mind with. Of course, this one is not about acute situations. It's about long-term health. Yeah.
I want to give one more little analogy that I use with fevers with my clients is, when you have like a toddler and they're learning to walk, and every time they try to walk, you pick them up, they're never going to learn how to walk. So they need to get up, they need to fall over a few times, and that's how they learn, and eventually they'll walk. And I feel like that's what it's like if you're suppressing a fever. Your child's immune system is learning and maturing through that process. And so if you are suppressing it, you're taking that immune system's learning opportunity away. So it's kind of like you're picking your child up every time they try to walk so that they don't fall over, but then they never learn to walk. And I feel like that's what it's like with the immune system is, it needs a fever because after that, after it's won the battle, it has, learned something from it so that next time the body gets sick, it goes, okay, I've dealt with this. I know how to deal with this. And it's quicker and easier and the body becomes stronger. And there's so many anecdotal, I don't know if there's in the research as well, but certainly anecdotal evidence that I've seen with my kids and a lot of my friends is that there's developmental leaps after a fever because the children have, grown so much. It's not just the immune system that's matured, it's actually their whole neurodevelopment that's matured after a fever.
That is often stated about the growth spurt or the developmental spurt after that. So I do think that for those people who have good intuition, they can use that, but not everyone necessarily does. Not everyone feels confident in their health field. And so information is really helpful for parents in general. And also, if you're stressed and you've got a lot on your plate as a parent with small children or children of any age for that matter, it's not going to be as easy to access your intuition as it would be if you had a quiet house and you could think carefully about things. So these kind of reference books are very important for everyone, really.
The reason I'm smiling so widely is because I love how practical you are. Like you always come and bring it back to the practical knowledge.
I grew up in the South Island of New Zealand and everybody was very practical. You grew your own vegetables and you sewed your own clothes and you got on with it no matter what. And that was what you took pride in. So it was a very old-fashioned kind of upbringing, really. but it has always stayed with me.
I love that. So, Nyema, where is the best place for people to purchase your book? I know you have it through your website, karunahealthcare.com.au, and you've got the other books by yourself and by John. If they just click on our books, it'll be in there. But where do you prefer people purchase the books from? Because we do have a worldwide audience with actually 40% of our listenerships in America. So, like
Okay,
people
so
worldwide.
it will be on Amazon. That's a convoluted process these days. It used to be simpler, but at the moment from our website, but we have it listed with print on demand. So anyone in the world can send us, order the book. If anyone orders from anywhere in the world on our website, we can have it printed on demand at a place close to them. So it could be in Iceland or Timbuktu, which is actually a place in Africa. So it's no problem. They just get a print on demand copy sent to them, which also keeps the postage into local rates.
That's amazing. If there's anybody in Timbuktu listening to this podcast, you have to email me and let me know. That would be so cool if we actually had a listener there. Uh,
So I did actually want to mention about the benefit for homeopaths themselves in this book, even though it is designed for parents. What happened to me when I sort of got to grips with all the research, I felt like for the first time in 20 years we've been dealing with autism intensely, is that I finally understood what led to it. Yeah. And I also learned how I can find out what's going on in this particular child. And what that can then do is I can recognize aggravating factors in that particular child. I can recognize sustaining causes, therefore obstacles to cure. And I can acknowledge deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies and toxicities. And even as a homeopath, I do believe that we need to understand the nutritional status of our clients. And one of the big ones, and not just an autistic child, but it does happen because they can be such poor eaters, is iron deficiency. Simple iron deficiency, meaning oxygenating your system. And it's the most common nutritional deficiency in the world. So these are really basic understandings that any practitioner of any modality needs to have. So I know there'll be a lot of homeopaths listening, and even though it is for parents, I tell you, there's a lot of great research, the getting the grip on autism and what is it happening inside an autistic child was just amazing. It was an amazing experience to learn all that. And so for the first time in my career, I feel like I can actually explain what autism is to myself, even.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations on putting together this amazing book. I know there was lots of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. And I just see us sitting there at your kitchen table and you like being so excited about this book and going, it's almost ready, Eugenie.
Oh,
And to actually be holding it in my hand right now and having read it and being able to tell our listeners around the world about this valuable tool is really wonderful. So, congratulations.
mm.
And I hope it's a huge success. And it was just lovely hanging out with you again. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much too, Eugenie.
Bye bye.